Welcome back, everybody, to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast. I am your co-host, Tyler Y'all, and today I'm with
Chris Kellum.
And our special guest today is
Patrick Stoy.
Thank you so much for coming on this Sunday afternoon. And so what are you drinking today before we get too far into it?
Scott made a nice Woodford Old Fashioned.
That's a good way to do it. Woodford is one of my top favorites, especially for old fashions. It's a good way to go.
Especially for a Sunday afternoon, works out well.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and especially overcast, a little bit rainy beforehand. It's a good way.
It's been funny because almost everybody in the audience today has had an old fashioned in their hand at one point. And I was like, it's cooling down or like it's a chill day when everyone's drinking old fashions in the summer.
Well, the clouds are coming because we've got that storm coming. So, everybody's like getting ready.
Yep. And then Tyler's over here. What are you drinking?
Yeah, I went completely off brands and went gin and got a French 75 just because the whiskey is starting to burn out the palate a little bit. So it happens. I was warned that it would happen. I thought that was like a old wives' tale that like you can burn your palate out on whiskey. And it's not an old wives' tale, so don't drink too much whiskey.
That's a lot of whiskey there, buddy.
Well, it also doesn't help that we like drink different whiskeys. So like, if you're drinking the same thing over and over, it takes a lot longer. Yeah. But we have we're trying so many different, or we've tried so many that like you get a bunch of different flavors, and your mouth is like, wait,
it's like a fatigue.
Yeah. Smorgasbord.
Right.
Yeah, flavor.
So everyone knows us. Oh, well, I am drinking water.
We didn't do enough hazing.
I had a drink on our break, so I figured I should balance it out.
Right? Brent's the bartender?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brent,
something.
Yeah, Brent made a good one. And then our final podcaster who's coming on today is also a bartender, so I'm going to have a drink there. So, like, you got to balance.
So I got water. I mean, that's the guy that I am. Finance, mortgages,
I have to be sober to, like, semi-understand what you guys are talking about. That's
the reason we're having this conversation, because it's really not that complicated.
To me, yes. But that's why I'm trying to learn more.
And that's what we're doing here today. Some people listening may or may not know what I actually do for a living. I'm a financial planner. So that's why I enjoy these type of conversations, and especially us together, because I don't want to jump into a conversation making the assumption that people know what I know already. And it's always good to have someone else just kind of balance you out, because like even though like if someone come on in the jewelry industry, we both worked in the jewelry industry, we'll probably start at a high level. So we try to keep that to a minimum. But other than that, Chris has a very separate repertoire of knowledge than what I do, and vice versa. So that's the way it kind of balances out the knowledge and starting from a base level and building up. So that's kind of the reason why we chose each other as the co-host of the podcast. So anyone out there who is wondering how did these two crazy guys get together, that's why.
Really? He just wanted me so I can apply for grants that he can't apply for.
It's not a business. It's not a business.
I'm just picking. So on a real note, tell us about yourself.
So basically, my name's Patrick Stoy. I've been in Wilmington since 1996. Been in North Carolina all my life. Went to military school in Virginia for a couple years. Hargrave Military Academy for freshman and sophomore year. Got me in line, because we all, as boys, need that every once in a while. So got in line there. Moved here in 1996. Moved down here one day before Hurricane Fran.
Ooh,
which was nice. Yeah, I basically graduated high school. East Rowan, went and played football at Catawba College. Came and visited Wilmington and fell in love with it, needless to say.
Yeah.
From that, I worked at a nice restaurant called La Cava in Salisbury. Had a job lined up at the bridge tender at Wrightsville Beach. Supposed to come down here and start working. Hurricane Fran hit literally the first day I moved down here.
Jeez.
8 feet of water came across Wrightsville Beach. So I ended up going, doing some roofing and just doing some extra work like that. Got back into the bridge tender, but back then they made you wash dishes for a full year. Before you could do anything, no matter what it was. So I'd go roof during the day, wash dishes at night, just get at it. And then from that, basically just learned how to work. That makes sense. And work myself up to bartender. So bartended on the bridge tender. A couple years later, worked down in Elijah's bartending. Grew up in that. 1999, got into the finance and mortgage industry.
Okay.
So I've been doing that for a little while, needless to say.
Nice.
Very good.
So I have a question.
Okay.
What is a military academy? Like, because I asked that question because it's always like the thing, like people are like, oh, I got to send my kid here, or you see it on TV. And like the only show I've ever seen where someone went to a military academy was Malcolm in the Middle. So I know that's not really how it works, but could you just, like, super far back in your past, but, like, what is it?
Well, there's two sides of it. So either you're a delinquent that needs to go there,
okay,
which, most of us usually were, or, you wanted to go the military path, go to one of the academies. So West Point, Citadel, Annapolis, those kind of things. And literally, for me, it was a change. It literally changed the trajectory of my life. The best thing that ever happened to me, thank goodness to my grandparents for supporting me and going there and doing it. I actually knew that I needed it at that point. So it was a good thing. And it was, it is literally like, we have get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You've got basically formation on Company Street. You just learn discipline. You learn leadership. You learn all those little things that, growing up, I grew up without a dad. So it was very good for me to be around that aspect of it, of like, this is the man side of things of doing it. So
right. I was curious because I know like you said, there's both sides, like the delinquent and then people going towards military. And I was just like, I wonder, like, because you aren't currently in the military, I was like, I wonder how that affected you. And like you said, it definitely changed your trajectory.
Well, it did. It was, for me, it was like, the best thing that was there was probably they have what's called a PG program. So it was basically people that had finished high school but couldn't quite get into college yet. So like a lot of top athletes. And I was able to be surrounded by that for the first time in my life. Oh, wow. Because it was just growing up the way that I grew up. I grew up on a farm. Then I moved to Fayetteville for 5 years, which was military. Was in military Boy Scout troops, like did all that. And, of course, they turn you into men very quickly at that age because that's what they're used to, the Special Forces, the Delta Force, all that. And they're your scout leaders, so they put you into the situations to make you figure it out very quickly. But then being around just the athletes and a lot of them that went and played college sports that, again, back in the 90s, so I'm old, but just like knowing that that's the people that I was training with and learning from and really mentors at that time helped me in that trajectory of being able to find that sports was my outlet instead of being a delinquent. Basically, that was my energy and put it in sports, wrestled, that was my thing, wrestling and football and track, soccer, like all, just doing all the sports that you possibly could to burn that energy. So it was a good way to find myself, essentially. But it's a good place if you're lost. And I say that from a perspective of if your kids have a lot of energy and they can't figure it out, it's a good way to put them in some kind of accountability, because we all need accountability. Doesn't matter. Of course, yeah. You leave us to ourselves, we're all going to get ourselves in trouble, right?
Yep.
Just a lot of trouble.
It's too easy. Yeah. The hard work is doing the right thing. Yeah. And that's what you got to learn. Just do the hard work. Do the hard work and do the right thing.
And it's interesting because, like, nowadays I work with a bunch of people who are a lot older than me, and I've worked with some people who are younger than me, and there's a lot of people who don't take accountability of their actions. And I feel like we should learn that at a younger age, and I think that's where you're at now in life is definitely a reflection of you being able to learn that younger and transition that into like a business model.
Yeah, no, it is, if you ask me the pivot in my life, that's the pivot right there. Because it could have gone one of three ways, right?
Yes, true.
So you went from military academy to service industry and then found your way into the finance industry, right?
Yep.
Is that kind of that?
Yep. So went from basically military school to college football, doing that, and then got into the service industry, which was really what anybody that's in business or anybody that's looking to just to get better, like everybody should wait tables and everybody should be, at the end of the day, everybody should go do 2 to 4 years in the military. You learn how to work hard, learn how to be, not the big dog, no matter how big you are. And then from the restaurant industry, it boils down to really like how to make everybody happy. I mean, we're all people pleasers at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. But it's how to communicate differently with different people that come from different backgrounds and different, just how to make the angriest person that's having the worst day in their life and how to make them smile and make it better.
I like that.
So how did you find your way out of the service industry into the finance industry then?
All right. So I've always been a hustler.
Yeah.
So basically, while I was waiting tables and bartending and doing all that, I just also had a vending machine route.
Oh, nice.
So just always, just busy mind. Can't sit around and do nothing, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So I had a vending machine route and some guys that I used to bartend with at the Fish House and the Bridge Tender opened up a mortgage company, and they had called me and said that they were looking to get some vending machines. So stopped by there and was like, hey, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license. And they knew how good I was with numbers just from being behind, like quick calculation. They were like, oh, well, come on in here. And, back in the good old days in 1999, it was 1099. So they had no risk. It was either, hey, come in, you either fail or you don't. And basically what happened is just perfect opportunity for me. I was like, all right, let's try this. And just because I was still bartending, was able just to sit there and talk crap to the customers, like, hey, you need to refinance your house. You're trying to buy something. Just kind of got into switching the conversation, essentially, from, getting to know the customer. Because when you're bartending, needless to say, you learn to know who your regulars are and really get to know them and just transition that conversation into, well, what do you owe in your house? What kind of debt do you have? And how many drinks are you ordering? Because you're under a lot of stress. What can I do to relieve that stress?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's financial. Needless to say, it's the number one reason for divorce, right? Mm-hmm. So just kind of started putting everything together and worked for a mortgage company from 2009 and 2005. I went and opened up my own company from 2009 till 2005. Was very rewarding. Needless to say, it was a matter of understanding how finance works. I came from a single mom household where we never owned anything. So we were always moving every 6 months to 12 months from trailer park to trailer park to trailer park to trailer park, never having in a base and going literally to probably, if I go back and I'm not going to count it right now because old fashioned, but probably went to literally 14 different schools in 12 years just from moving around and bouncing around and having to reinvent yourself wherever you were. What worked, what didn't. So from that perspective, all of a sudden I had an opportunity to be like, wait a minute, you can buy a house and you can own a house. And a big calling for me is that I look at it from a perspective that those kids can grow up with those friends that they've known their whole life, starting from kindergarten to middle school to high school, and like whether it's playing sports together or sleepovers together or playing video games together all the time, like those are the friends that they grew up with. Yeah. And that's just something that I didn't. So it was a big calling for me to like, how can I create stability for the kids, but help the parents create wealth through real estate to leave a legacy? That's kind of my big thing.
Nice. It's such a thing that people don't really think about, is because if you're moving all the time, you can't make a set of friends, and that has an impact on people, especially when you go into adulthood. Like, you being able to morph and like adjust the different situations is amazing, but not a lot of people can do that. And I think that, like I said, it definitely helps, especially in the mortgage industry, like being able to connect with different people, because not every person walking in has a 6-7 figure job with 2 incomes and they know what they're buying their third house. A lot of people are coming in and are like, oh, I've never bought anything. I'm just running around trying to pull in enough money to do this, and we've been renting from this place to this place.
I know it is. Working 2 to 3 jobs, that's really what it boils down to. And I've always done that, and I still do that now. I still have 2 to 3, instead of jobs, companies working for me at the same time. And that's really what it boils down to, is just understanding that you've got to create your own luck by working hard and making sure that everything that comes along is going to make you uncomfortable, but you better try to do it, because what's worst case scenario? You're going to fall on your face, get back up, and dust off and keep going, right?
Yeah. I like that.
One of the favorite things that I saw just recently was everyone's like, what happens if your entrepreneurial endeavor doesn't work? I work until I'm 65, the same thing that you're doing right now. Yep. It's like, I'll be in the same exact place, but what happens if it does work?
I learned something.
Significantly more. Exactly. Yeah. I've learned more from the failure of it. And 2, even if the worst case scenario happens, I'm right back to where I would have been regardless. Like there's really no
there is no downside
to it. Really. Yeah.
I mean, it's always looking at like the glass half full, always, no matter what, looking forward, glass half full, just keep going, because it's amazing how much your mindset can really control your outcome.
Oh,
literally.
For sure. Because there's so many people who are like, I can never do this. When you say you can't, then your mind says, oh, I'm not going to do it.
Shut yourself down.
Yeah. Right. Even like I always thought I was relatively mentally tough, like for the long time. I wrestled and everything too, so you have to have some
boy
type
class.
of. What's that?
It's the boy class. There's no girls.
It was I was like 134, so I
Where
was in PA, Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're all legs then.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what we did up there. So like I always felt like I was relatively mentally tough because of that and everything. You kind of have to, because like a lot of people, you have to love the durability of the sport and the pain to get through it. You don't just like, some people play basketball because like, oh, I enjoy running up and down the court type of thing. Like no one just like loves to get their like ass beat and like face pushed into the mat and have mat burn everywhere.
Let's do it.
Right. It's like you love the grind of it.
Yeah.
And so with that said, I actually ended up getting like a mental toughness coach just a couple years ago. And I was like, oh, there was a whole nother level that I didn't even realize. And I already thought that I was pretty disciplined and had a high, like mentally tough, like capability. Just from going and pushing beyond what I was used to already opened up so many more different capabilities than what I thought I was able to accomplish.
Enjoy the suck. I'm sure you've talked about David.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, that's what pushes us on and makes it enjoyable, right? Because work hard and play even harder.
Yes. Yeah, that is my favorite. You said you started your mortgage firm. Is that what they're called? I don't know what these businesses are called.
Loan officer.
Okay.
Back then, it was loan officer in 1999 is where I first got in the industry.
And then you did it and you started your own spot in 05?
2005.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when like you're sitting there working 14, 16, 20-hour days doing all this, and all of a sudden your boss is riding around in a Ferrari. You're like, wait a minute. I'm working really, really hard here.
And I can't afford that.
And I don't have a Ferrari. Yeah. So I was like, so that was the, not that I hadn't been independent and understand entrepreneurship, but that was really the change. It's like, I need to go do something a little bit different, take the risk. And that's the biggest thing, is getting uncomfortable. Yeah. If you're going to jump, right? Mm-hmm. And so 2005 just kind of left. I mean, we still get together now. It's still, we get together once a month, still have dinner. Appreciate everything you taught me, but literally just the learning of what you can do and having those mentors around you and surrounding yourself with people that can show you the path.
I like that. So the reason why I asked that, was it because you were in the thick of it when everything flopped in like 07 to 10?
08.
Yeah. 09.
The problem is I always like to ask people who are older than me who were actually going through it, like, how was that? Because I was a kid. Like, I was in college, did college, came out, was working retail, and like working 2-3 jobs, renting a place, and I was like, oh, well, it just sucks because I'm making minimum wage, which is $5 and some change an hour, and so I'm always curious, is like, how did that affect you, especially if you were in the mortgage business?
Yeah, well, here's the way that I go at things. For what I do, it's about doing what's right for my client. Mm-hmm. And so honestly, from 2007 or even 2005 when I started my own, I mean, the people that we were dealing with, because I always talk about a budget and like what can you afford, and it's not just what's on your credit report. It's like, all right, let's talk about the lifestyle. What do your kids do? What do you like? My son played travel hockey, so I knew that was a $10,000 to $20,000 commitment a year. It doesn't show up on my credit report, but it's having those conversations and what I call kind of getting financially naked. And like, let's understand outside of what's like here in the numbers. What is your lifestyle? Because nobody wants to sacrifice their lifestyle. So the conversations that I was having with people even then was affordability, because I knew at the end of the day, and the way that I grew up, looked at it, I didn't want their kids to have to go through the stress or moving around. And that's one of my big things is, granted, I'm dealing with the parents and I'm having that conversations, but I look at the whole household. Like, how old are the kids? What are they doing? What are their sports? Like, have you allocated how much it's going to cost for this or that? Because, it's not cheap for your kids to play sports, right. But you have to bring that into that consideration. Or even if it's not even sports, it's piano, it's the other things that are their outlets, and you have to bring that into the holistic budget conversation. Like, really, where does it need to be? So honestly, for us, we grew. We ended up being the number one internet lender in North Carolina during that time period. So 2008 for me personally was actually a time of just continuing to grow, and I can say that's just happened to happen over time, because it's just about giving people the right answer. Not worry about the sale. Sometimes it doesn't turn into a sale, but at least you give them the advice that they need at that point in their life.
Right. That's kind of what we've learned too, in the same type of realm. So like, not me, but my senior advisor went through 2008 and all of that stuff too, as a financial planner and financial advisor. And he kind of said the same thing. He was like, I never came in just like, let me take as many assets as I can to grow this as much as possible, because up until 2000 anyway, before the bubble burst there, it was like everyone that he was like learning from, it was just like, just grow assets, grow assets, grow assets. Oh, okay, we had this bubble burst, grow assets, grow assets. He was like, I actually sat down, I met with these people, we actually came up with a plan with them. He goes, so when 08 happened, like, oh, yeah, it sucked, but like all the people that weren't doing it right, they fell out of the business. Those clients needed somewhere to go. I was doing it right. I didn't have that big burst. I was able to continue making my practice, doing it the right way, and grow. And it sounds like you did something very similar.
It's the same thing. It's like, I used to run the 110 hurdles.
I
used to run the 110 hurdles. Corny White, actually, who I went to military school, played at Virginia Tech. He's the one who taught me ran hurdles. So for me, it was the understanding of the hurdles against the 1 mile. Makes sense? You got the sprint, you got the marathon. You got to look at that. It's the same thing. Like, this person that's given the opportunity to talk to them and listen to me, am I thinking about the short term, or am I thinking about the long term?
Yeah.
And that's really what it boils down to, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I'm not going to make enough money in 2 or 3 years by taking advantage of people. This is something that's going to be 20, 30, 40 years of doing what I'm doing and giving them advice that they're going to make sure that they're raving fans and pass it down to their children, and their children, that's the biggest compliment you can get, when they're like, hey, I've got my son getting ready to call you because they need to buy a house.
Yeah.
So you're like, all of a sudden, like, you are the professional, and you've done exactly what you should have done by being that trusted advisor. And that's really what you've got to focus on, is making sure that you're giving them the right advice, whether it's a sale that day or not, because it's about the long run, not the sprint.
Mm-hmm. So I also noticed when I was looking at your Instagram and stuff too, you've amassed a pretty nice following on Instagram.
I can thank my wife for that. I just do what I do.
That is the thing that I feel like many people do, but not enough. Like, giving credit where it's due. Like you mentioned earlier, like, oh yeah, my wife set this up. She said, hey, you're going to show up. You're going to have some drinks. You're going to talk. You're like, okay. You understand that she's definitely been that person to help you, I'm assuming.
100%.
Yes. Shout out to your wife. What's her name?
I know, Laura.
Yep. Shout out, Laura. Oh, and my wife's here too. Hey, babe. So, because you've grown, you now have multiple businesses. Do you, like, I work in retail, so like we look and when we go to hire people, we're like, hey, how do they fit with our team? Can they sell this potential stuff? Can they learn this? Is it the same way when you're bringing people on into your businesses?
So I believe in the relationship more than the knowledge,
if
that makes sense.
Yeah.
You've got to be you've got to be able to be willing to learn. You got to be able to do hard work. As long as you can do that, we can teach you how to do this, if that makes sense. But you've got to be open-minded. You really do. You got to be open-minded, work hard, create your own luck, and then you can learn anything that you want to. I can tell you one of the first books that I ever read was called The Wealthy Barber. And it's probably, I don't even know if it's in circulation anymore. That's how old it is. But no, it was, but it was just understood that, like, how one person can change the trajectory of so many people that they have the opportunity to come in contact with. One of the books that, and you probably, Unreasonable Hospitality, or that, I mean, being in the restaurant industry.
Of course.
Like customer service focused, that talks about really about, you know, having the energy and the drive, but also having the processes that make the systems work. That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day, that put those two together and you're unstoppable.
I love hearing that.
Yeah,
like, I mean, it's one really of those. I like reading books, but I also am one of those, like, have to do it in practice. Everyone's like, oh, read this book. And I'm like, I could read it, but I don't know if it would stick as well as if I see you doing it and I'm like learning and I'm like, oh, okay, I see how it's done. How can I learn from that and how can I grow? I think that's great that I always love hearing books that people come on and like, I read this, and like it helped me grow as a person, especially in the business sector. So if I ever open a business, I have so many actual recommendations that aren't just Google. Because everyone's like, oh, if you Google good books,
you know,
it's
not if, it's when, right?
Yes,
right. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, we were talking to the owner of Freya's house, who was in here earlier, and I was like, hey, I know exactly where your shop is because I drove past it, and I was like, this would be a great bar. And of course, someone made it into a bar. And she's like, yeah, you know, we should sit down, have a talk. You want to open something? I'm like, see, and that's what I love about this podcast and this community is that like you're learning from people and they're always uplifting, like, and the people who are like pushing down, like, no, you shouldn't do this. Those are the people who fall out of our lives.
Well, it's all about the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so easy. I mean, being in the restaurant industry, you know, it's so easy to get caught up in that trap of doing the same thing over every night. You're like, oh, I made all this money, then I go spend it. All this money, I go spend it. You're like, now I got to work a double tomorrow just to pay my rent, even though I made so much money last night. You know, I mean, it's pretty funny. I was working at Elijah's back in the day. I mean, like me and Josh Sloop, we were like, man, we just kept wasting so much money. And we started like literally writing down every night, like, all right, here's what I made, here's what I made, here's what I made, you know, in tips. Like literally document everything. Right. And then like, all right, how much am I going to spend? Because it's so easy to go out. I mean, you know, back, and I was listening to John Vincent's the other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was funny because we were talking about this because that's the same, that was my era in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's right.
Down there, and Ray, the stars, took over Slice of Life and all that fun stuff. And that was the whole thing. We make it and we go spend it. But there was no accountability. No. So you have to start writing it down. Like, all right, I'm going to write this down. And then how much did I go spend? And then do the math. And you like start just simple. I mean, on a piece of paper because it makes you do the work. And just doing that and like understanding, like, all right, am I hanging out with the right people that I'm like negative? I got to wake up tomorrow morning to make $200 to break even?
Yeah.
Or those kind of things. And so it really started off the aspect for me of like understanding how much you make and how much you spend, and then make sure you're hanging out with the right people that are taking you in the right direction and going that right direction from a perspective of not just mental, but also like spiritual, holistic. I mean, however, whatever speaks to you.
Yeah.
But just make sure that we're moving forward and we're doing the right thing and we're all growing together because, you know, nobody wants to be the guy like, all right, I got to pay for everybody's tabs because nobody else can afford it. You know, they spent it all the night before, right?
Yep. Gosh, I don't miss those days. Like
we've all had them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's some people who don't,
but the good point. I mean, the point of our life now is that we can do that and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, because we've moved past that. It's not like I got to go work harder tomorrow just to pay for what I did last night.
Yeah. Right.
Oh my God. So many times because I worked in shops that were mostly female driven. So I was that guy in the group and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm buying drinks for everybody. And then I look and I'm like, well, I only made $300 on my 2-week paycheck and I just spent $75. I can't go out tomorrow. And I'm so happy I make more money than that nowadays.
Put another zero behind it.
I was going to say, yeah. Start adding it up.
Or 2 or 3. I mean, you know.
Right. So just because I'm curious, so we're gonna jump a little bit and like probably knowledge base from like ground level up a little bit more. But we just had the new jobs report come out, and rates have fallen quite a bit from where they were. Where do you foresee the market going? Because we know the Fed is going to start cutting rates. Do you foresee, as some places saying, that's going to be 3 cuts this year? Do you think it's going to be 1? Do you think it's going to be 0? What does your magic crystal ball
your unofficial?
Yeah.
Right. So because it's all of our magic crystal balls.
They shoot up like a rocket and they float down like a feather.
Yes.
Okay. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And the Fed never moves as quickly as we expect them to. Right.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Because we always like more pain one way or the other. Yeah. And this is really just a big hangover from the COVID interest rate drops.
Yep.
Right? So at the end of the day, interest rates don't matter, to be honest with you. It's all about your budget. And I will tell you that as interest rates continue to go down, and they'll float down like a feather, the value of the asset of the house is only going to go up.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether you buy it at a 7% interest rate and it costs $500,000. By the time it gets to 5.5, guess what? That $500,000 asset has gone up to $600,000. So your payment and your budget's exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the sooner you do it, the better it is, because it puts the net worth into your pocket instead of putting it in somebody else's. So honestly, at the end of the day, rates, yes, they're going to continue to flow down like a feather. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of getting control of that asset as soon as possible. And I'm telling you that 2 years from now, just like hindsight's 20/20, and 2 years from now, you're like, man, I wish I'd have bought that when.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go back and see that the appreciation of that asset becomes greater as the Fed continues to lower interest rates, because you have more affordability and you have more competition. So people are still going to pay those premiums. I mean, we're a growing country.
Right. Yes.
There's more and more people every day. Babies are still being born. Yep. So the sooner you buy, the more generational wealth you'll be able to create.
That's kind of where I figured you were going with that story, just because of what you said prior. Yeah, so because from what you said before in creating the generational wealth and everything, I was like, I know where this question will lead to. And I appreciate you saying that, because it's basically the mortgages version of what I tell people. It's time in the market, not timing the market. So you're going to try to time when these rates are going to go down while the market continues to rally. Where in our kind of world too, okay, like, oh, it's really high. Well, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting to pull back down to? Because it's probably not going to hit that. And now you're going to miss the rally that happened on the backside of that too.
Well, it's dollar cost averaging in your world.
Exactly. Right.
So, yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, here's what it boils down to. 99% of wealth is created through real estate. The other 1% is the luck.
Right.
That's it. And most of us don't have access to a company that's going public or inheriting $1 billion from somebody, right?
Yeah.
And there is so much money about to move into the United States, because, like, one of my clients, Indian guy, owns multiple restaurants. He basically explained this to me, and it was like, all right, now I understand. So I'm going to share the wealth and share the knowledge, right? And he was like, Patrick, you have to understand, like, we have 10,000 years of wealth that we've created from my grandparents that have been over in India or wherever they are. We're not going back there. We're going to bring that here. So we're looking at 10 generations down in our legacy, basically, because all that money is about to move here, and what we think is expensive now is going to be nothing.
Right.
Literally, because it will continue to compound. I mean, if you go back and you look at what, like, our grandparents paid for a house, like, oh my gosh, they paid $30,000 for a 1,000 square foot house. Well, guess what? That house is now worth $3 million if you bought it in California, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's just, I mean, it's the long game. We go back to, is this a sprint or is this a marathon? And the marathon is our family's legacy. Yep. Making sure that our kids don't have to go, or at least have the option to not have to go through the crap that we had to go through.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have somebody ahead of us thinking about that.
Nice. Right. So this might be a real estate question. Might be a mortgage. I'm not really sure. Multifamily homes versus single family with larger acreage?
House hack.
Well, here's where it boils down to. So if you're young, no kids, maybe a partner or maybe not, you can buy a house every year and continue to move up and build your portfolio. Mm-hmm. So the best part about what just happened with the change with Fannie or Freddie actually is that you can put 5% down and buy all the way up to a quad, which means you're now going to have 4 roommates, but they don't take stuff out of your fridge because they're in their own room. So instead of being like a traditional 3-2 to where like you share and it's called house hacking, is that you have them all live in the same environment. We all share the same bathroom. We all share the same kitchen, all those kind of fun things. Now you can basically buy a quadruplex, which is 4 units. A triplex is 3. A duplex is 2. And they can't get in your unit. So now you can buy a quadruplex with 5% down, conventional, which is nice because you're not restricted to the FHA limits on what they are, and literally have your own unit, and they live in their own, and make that house hacking income, live there for 1 year, and go rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Fannie and Freddie allow up to 10 finance properties, so you can do that. And then once we get outside of that stuff, we get into, like I work with a lot of investors.
Right.
So we do a lot of Airbnb loans. We do a lot of DSCR loans. We do, I have a private equity side. So outside of the residential, where I help people build primary residence wealth to create a legacy for their family, I help investors grow their portfolio to provide stable housing for people that just can't buy.
Right.
But also create massive wealth for their downline.
That's neat. What got you into the private equity side?
It was a need.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny, actually. So gentleman downtown, I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to name drop here in town. But about 10 years ago, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do things. And the reason I say that is I invested in a mobile home park in 2006, 2007. One of my clients was like, oh, just give me, $20,000 and passive income and all these fun things. So I was like, all right. It wasn't even $20,000, probably $10,000. And I used my home equity line on my house because I didn't have it. I was like, all right, let's do this. He was like, I'll take care of everything. We went to an auction, bought a mobile home park. From that standpoint, we turned that into I'm going to say this the right way. So basically, boiled down to that we took that investment of $10,000, and I've been able to turn that into a 52-unit mobile home park that provides stable housing for parents, single moms, that can have their kids in one environment, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Because
instead of
for
them
me,
having
that's
to move here to here because they're interesting.
Yeah, so that was my end result
Yeah.
of the reason for doing that. But the gist of it was that $10,000 investment turned into a business that created a legacy for not only their downline, because they're buying the home from me, and they're buying that and keeping it stabilized to be able to just provide that stability.
Yeah. So is that kind of like that situation, was that kind of like a rent to own type of deal?
Yes. So the aspect of that is that it's affordability. Mm-hmm. It's just an affordability aspect that it provides the stability that those kids can be in the same school district and doing the same thing, and being with the same friends and people and doing the same thing.
Makes sense.
And it's not overly expensive versus like certain spots in town that are astronomically priced, and you're like, well, rent just went up every year to 2 years. You're giving people a little bit more stability.
Oh, no. I mean, that's what it boils down to. I mean, like some of my employees, they're paying $1,800 a month for 1 bedroom. So I'm like, what?
Yeah. I'm like, we were talking about that last night. I was like, I looked at the cargo containers a couple of years ago, and I'm like, this is so cool. My wife is like, no, we are not two of us living in a one-bedroom for like $1,500-$1,600. If we're going to do that, might as well move into a spot that like we could actually have people come visit, like a 2-bedroom. And I was like, oh, well, same price, but I'm just not in the middle of town. I got to drive a little bit. So it was a smart move.
Yeah.
What always is grab control of that asset as soon as you can. Period.
I like that.
Okay, it looks like he was going to say something.
Yes. So I do have like one of my last questions for you. You've kind of mentioned it a few times, but what does success look like for you and your family, or just you?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's work hard and play hard, right?
Yep.
Play harder.
Yeah.
Actually, and that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Is just, I mean, work harder than everybody else. I mean, that's what I try to tell a lot of the younger kids that work for me right now. I mean, it's just like, everybody else wants to go out to the bar and be like, oh, let's go to the beach and do this, especially here where we live.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, man, the biggest thing that can differentiate you from everybody else is what you do in your 20s will affect you in your 30s. What you do in your 30s will set you up for success in your 40s. Mm-hmm. And 40s will set you up for retirement if you want that in your 50s, literally. Huh. But it's just understanding that concept of it, of just work hard, create your own luck, and just make sure you're surrounded by the right people, and you'll know whether or not they're the right people. Are they lifting you up, or are they pulling you down?
You got that right. So we are coming up at the top of the hour here too, so I will give you one of my final questions, and that is, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, heck.
Hit you with a hard one at last.
Don't drink so much bourbon. No, I was kidding. No. Where your palate goes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, if I had to go back and tell myself, was to be more open-minded. Don't be so like, I know that I'm right. And I say that from not just a business, but a personal relationship, because, I mean, we're focused on whiskey and wisdom here. Mm-hmm. And, we're so driven. A lot of us are driven, but, even though we know we're right and we're going to be right no matter what, but just sometimes you got to step back and smell the roses, which has always been a hard thing for most people to do, but just enjoy life.
Yeah.
Balance it out.
I like it.
Love it. So for anyone who may be out there who's either looking to buy a house or interested in the concept of buying a house, how can they reach you to have that first conversation?
Yeah, just patrickstoy.com. It's pretty easy. Perfect. I mean, just, again, at the end of the day, it's all about building wealth through real estate to leave a legacy for me, and that's what I want to guide people to.
So for those people that are hesitant to even look at it, what's the first step for them to even conceptualize owning a home?
Conversation, relationship building. That's really what it boils down to. There's no magic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about really getting with a professional and just having a conversation and being real, and don't try to hide anything.
Right.
And just be like, hey, here's the stresses that I have, and what can I do to move forward?
Yeah. So your team's open for the people who feel like they're out there, that feel like they don't have anything to like come. You open doors, come on in, let's have the conversation.
100%. It's all about just, people don't realize that the advantages they actually have. They just need somebody to tell them that they have them there and show them the way.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and that's one of the reasons why we bought our first house that was out in Leland. We were looking out in Leland, and we're like, oh, shoot, we don't make any money. We can get a USDA loan out here. We can put
100%.
literally nothing down and walk into this house. Like, this makes a lot of sense. And
that's the guidance that people need to understand. Right. Like, if you're not a veteran, because the VA loan's the best loan, USDA is the second best loan, then we have 100% conventional loans. But understanding, like, making sure you're getting one with the right people to understand from a budget perspective based off of your lifestyle.
Right.
It's not going to change your lifestyle. Like, I can actually do this.
Yep.
I love that.
I love it.
Mic drop.
Yep. That's about it.
I really want to say thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate
absolutely.
it, Chris and Tyler.
Appreciate it.
It's an honor. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I always think, I'm like, oh, we haven't really had anybody in the mortgage industry on in like a year.
Have we had anyone in the mortgage industry on?
Yeah. We had two.
Oh, yeah.
I can come join y'all and drink bourbon all day.
Right.
Hang out if you need somebody extra, just let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always, we like adding people from different industries, and I think it's always nice getting someone in, even in the same industry, at different times, because everything changes. Everyone sees things differently. You've been in the industry for longer than
Don't age me.
Well, no, I have friends who were in the industry, and they were like, "Oh, I've been in for 15 years," and I was like, "Really, you've been in for that long?" And they're like, "Well,
hey, I've been in for 2. Do you want me to give you some advice?"
Right.
So I just like to see the different sides of it and what you've learned versus what other people have learned. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.